keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat out is brilliant. Brilliant. Encapsulate what that means.
Yeah. Well, I think it means that we have to give our kids the passport to adulthood because they want freedom and they're going to take it anyway.
Yeah.
So when we do that, if we and we found that it was even good for us with our kids to almost do a ceremony. You know, the Jews have bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, and of course that's at 13. But that was in the day. I mean, Mary probably had Jesus at about 14 years old.
I know.
And people forget that.
I know.
But she was an adult. We didn't have the teenage years. So when they're 18, even though they're not acting like it, I think it's important for us to recognize you're an adult now with the responsibilities of an adult. And so by doing that, we're helping them become responsible adults. And I would always add who love God if we can.
Yes. And I am Randy Phillips. This is Backstage with Randy Phillips, where I coerce speakers, authors, athletes to kind of go back behind the scenes and tell you the stuff you may not hear all the time. Oh, my guest today, oh my goodness, read his books, love him, Jim Burns. Jim, welcome.
Hey, I'm excited to
Welcome
get
to
backstage.
Texas.
Finally, yes. I like Texas.
Backstage.
I'm a Southern California boy, but I
Yeah,
like
I know.
Texas.
What part of Southern California?
I live in Dana Point, so it's kind of a little surf
Lord, have
town.
mercy.
Yeah, it's not a bad place.
It's gorgeous,
And
gorgeous.
Kathy and I bought way early, so we couldn't afford Dana Point today because of California prices. So
Yeah.
we know people who are moving,
that's
still
why-
moving to Texas because of
Come
that.
on to Texas.
Yeah, I would move to Austin. I'm not sure I would move to some of the other places.
Austin is little California.
Yeah.
Just a little dot.
Yeah.
In
I
the-
bought, last time I was in Austin, I bought a t-shirt for my son-in-law that said, keep Austin weird. And he wears it all the time. And I still haven't seen the weirdness of Austin, but I hear it's there.
It's tamed a little bit,
Has
but Jim, your book about parenting your adult children,
Yeah.
the official title is
Doing life with your adult children, keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat out.
Changed My Life. Oh, I wish I'd have gotten a hold of that.
Yeah.
Do you hear that a lot?
No,
many years ago?
well, Kathy and I wish we would have gotten a hold of it before we wrote it because, you know, I was actually coerced into writing that. A friend of mine said, would you speak at my convention on parenting your adult children? I go, no. I said, because I don't know how to do that. And Kathy and I are just dying on it right now. Get somebody and don't put me at the same time because I want to go to their workshop. And he said, will you pray about it? And so being a good Christian pastor type, I said, sure. And then I didn't pray. He just moved over to Kathy and said to Kathy, my wife, hey, you got to talk Jim into speaking on this. She goes, you need to do that because we need to hear something. And I said, Kathy, I don't even know what I'm doing. So it was I wrote that book out of desperation and then I did the research. But yeah, so many of our friends who have adult children are like, didn't see it coming.
Oh, my Lord. You know, one of the funniest lines when I opened your book, one of the funniest lines right away that I laughed out loud, which is hard to do. You don't usually laugh out loud when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
I was on a plane and it said, be nice to your kids. One day they'll take away your keys.
Right. And put you into the convalescent care facility. And we were looking at our kids at that point going, oh dear. In fact, we were, when we have a little, we were doing our will and our, life trust and whatnot. And we went, which one of these girls are going to be in charge?
I know.
We're not sure they were. Now that's changed.
I know.
Because now that our kids have gone through what we call the emerging adulthood or latent adolescence, whichever you want to call it. Now that they've become responsible young women, and I'm so proud of them. But boy, those first the 20s for us was tough. Our kids are in their 30s now. Yeah,
Oh, that's great. How many books have you written?
I've written a bunch because I used to write some curriculum, so I think there's over 60. But
60 books in publications.
Yeah.
My goodness. And then, are you on 800 radio stations?
Well, what's interesting is
you're heard on.
And so I did radio for years, and we can't bury it because radio is what they call evergreen. So I'm still on stations, but I've got a podcast now that I do.
What's it called?
It's called Homeward with Jim Burns.
Homeward with Jim Burns.
And what I do is I have great conversations like what we're going to have and having with some of the key leaders in the world of marriage and parenting. And
thank you.
I'm taking notes on, these conversations. It's just wonderful. So I love doing that. And, this week I've got Ruth Graham, who is Billy Graham's
Yes.
daughter, and we're actually talking about forgiving her father, and we're talking about forgiveness.
Wait. Ruth forgiving her.
She has a book on forgiving her father. So Billy Graham, she has quite a story. I almost told it today because her story was, she was married to a gentleman who actually was kind of a serial adulterer, and I would never say this publicly, but she told it at the Billy Graham funeral. So.
Yes,
it's now,
I heard it.
Yeah, and then she married somebody who, both Billy and her mom Ruth said, we're looking at red flags, yellow flags, and she said, well, I'm going to marry him anyway, kind of an adult child's type of thing. About just a few months later, she called and said, "Can I come home?" So she fled, and Billy Graham greets her in Montreat at their compound and said, "Bunny, I love you. And I'm so proud of you. And let's don't get your stuff yet. Let's just go in. Your mom fixed your favorite meal." And I thought, what a beautiful sign. Because I love, she told me once we were in my office and she said, my dad would kill me. I thought he was just going to kill me. And I laughed because I go, wait, this is Billy Graham. You know how my kids used to say, "Mom, Dad's shouting at me." And I'm going, I'm not shouting, right? But Billy Graham, I'm like, I don't think Billy Graham would have killed his daughter. But I loved that line there. But then Billy showed her deep love, deep grace. Today here at your church, I was talking about the loving father, the prodigal son, and the loving father loved the prodigal. And that's a great sign for all of us because we're in some ways we're all prodigals. And we can take that illustration of Jesus and turn it into a beautiful illustration of showing love to our kids, even when we don't even agree with our kids.
What does the number 936 mean? Learned that from you today.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
936.
936 weeks. Yeah. It's, from the time a baby is born till the time they are launched to adulthood, you only got 936 weeks. And, there's a scripture in Psalm 90:12 that says, "May I number my days so I may gain a heart of wisdom." It's a prayer.
Yes.
And I've been praying that now that I understand that 936 thing. Now we're redoing it because we've got grandkids now. And funny enough,
you have a book coming out on that?
I actually talk about that sometimes.
Because that's where I am now.
Yeah, right. On grandparent. I know. So I don't. I actually talk about it in Doing Life with Your Adult Children and Finding Joy in the Empty Nest, because so much of the empty nest is actually pulling into the grandkid thing. So I write about it. But I have an app that shows how old my grandkids are in weeks. And whenever I share it with my daughters, so I have 2 daughters who have kids, so we have 4 grandkids. And my daughters are like, "Don't send this to me, Dad." Because they get sad. Because right now our James is 9. Well, he's right at halfway. He doesn't look like he's at halfway. He doesn't act like he's going to be an adult soon.
I know.
But he's halfway. And
that's a responsibility.
And I find even as a grandparent, that my motivation to build a legacy with those grandkids is actually, I think it was stronger than with our kids. With James, I've read through the children's Bible 3 times. I didn't do that with my kids. We read Chronicles of Narnia, and we prayed, we did different things. I wasn't as focused.
Right.
So now I'm moving it with Charlotte, who's 6, and I think we're on time and a half of going through this children's Bible, and they love it.
Oh, that's great.
So much more motivated as a grandparent.
936 weeks. Right. So to be purposeful and prayerful and those things. You're keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat out. It's brilliant. Brilliant. So I know we could spend the rest of our time on that, but just encapsulate what that means.
Yeah. Well, I think it means that we have to give our kids the passport to adulthood. We talked about it at church today. We have to give them the passport to adulthood because they want freedom and they're going to take it anyway.
Yeah.
So when we do that, if we and we found that it was even good for us with our kids to almost do a ceremony. The Jews have bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. And of course, that's at 13, but that was in the day. I mean, Mary probably had Jesus at about 14 years old.
I know.
And people forget that.
I know.
But she was an adult. We didn't have the teenage years. So when they're 18, even though they're not acting like it, I think it's important for us to recognize you're an adult now with the responsibilities of an adult. And so by doing that, we're helping them become responsible adults. And I would always add who love God if we can.
Yes.
And that's a hard one because a lot of kids,
tough.
Who are raised in the church, that right at that age, 18, is when they sometimes veer off a tad bit. That doesn't mean that they're going to be gone forever. I mean, I'm seeing kids coming back. I call them kids because I'm old, but I'm calling the kids coming back who, once they get married, once they make babies.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing. And so churches like your church where family matters.
Yes.
That's the kind of church that they're going to want to come to. Yeah.
Thank you for helping me and so many thousands of people. After you speak at a church or lecture hall or, arenas, you go out to the lobby. What's the most common thing you hear a parent say?
I think they talk about connection because I think as a communicator, and you do this so well, Randy, is, you've got to be authentic.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I said that I don't often say, but I said it today and it wasn't in my notes, but I just said, families are messy and God is okay with messes.
Oh, thank the Lord.
And with that, I think people need to hear that God is okay with our messes. I think sometimes we look around at church, everybody's dressed, nice, and they've all, bathed probably, at least maybe not one guy who I saw today, but they've all bathed, and and we think, well, they have it perfect, or they didn't have an argument this week, or they didn't have that, and so I think sometimes what I want to have them hear is this was authentic, this is right, but also I think it's really important that we give people hope when it comes to family, because with families, we're so often, oh gosh, our marriage isn't perfect. And, a sinner married another sinner, and then you have sinnerlings. And so you're bumping into each other. Yeah. And I think it's really important that we give them hope, but also practical ideas.
I know.
I was reading a book on the plane because I have a podcast coming with, it's kind of the number one parenting book out right now. And I thought, how great is this that at every chapter there's a takeaway that I can honestly start tomorrow. And that's a beautiful thing. And so I think that's what people want.
Yes. Oh, so much. Unsolicited advice is taken as criticism. That's one of your chapters.
Right.
Unsolicited advice, is taken as criticism.
Yeah.
Can you explain?
Sure. Well, parents need to understand that their intentions are always good. I mean, I can't imagine that they're not. I mean, we have good intentions. The kids see it differently, though. They see it as you not believing that they're all grown up. We didn't mean that. When we give them unsolicited advice, we're just thinking we're kind of helping them out. And we've been doing it for 20 years with them. So why would we want to change? But now what they want is they want to make those decisions, even if they're the wrong decisions.
Okay.
And I think that's the hard thing for me, is because I would say and Kathy, my wife, I would say we know sometimes better than they do certain things because we've been around longer.
I know.
And we've just lived life longer.
And we made those mistakes.
Exactly. But, I think sometimes what we have to do is either just allow the experience of a poor choice to happen and then they learn, or I think we sometimes have to ask for permission. And that is the weirdest deal because I didn't ask for permission for this 20 years. I didn't at all.
Me either.
But and Kathy will say to me sometimes, because I'm one who wants to still give advice. That's what I do for a living, so to speak. And Kathy will go, "You need to practice principle number 2 here."
Quit reading my book.
Yeah, she can see the eye roll in daughter Becca, and she kind of goes, "Yeah, well, the eye roll was I didn't really ask you if you had an opinion on where we're moving."
It's so good. All right, but you don't step away from, like, if harm is involved, right?
No.
If they're going, if that decision going to bring harm, we have to step in, right?
No, we do. And when Homeward we do seminars. And so when we do like a 3-hour seminar, we talk a lot about what do you do with kids who maybe have a mental illness,
right?
Or kids who there's abuse, there's addictions, there's the tough stuff, right? Adultery in a relationship because they're now married and they're in a really tough situation. I think that's where we sometimes do need to step in, but I think we do it in a different way. We say, can we step in and help you through this? And usually when they're in kind of a mess, they'll say, please help. But no, I think there's times they need to know. I mean, I was saying to a woman last week I was at an event with Chick-fil-A and I was doing a marriage thing. They do amazing stuff. And I said, does your daughter know what you believe? Yes. Does she know how you feel? Yes. Then expand the relationship.
Because we can tend to get stuck there.
Exactly.
Every time we see them, we're harping on that thing.
Oh, no, exactly. And it's what our heart is breaking for. So when we had a daughter who said, I had to give up my parents' faith to own my own faith, which now she's stronger in faith than we are probably. Yeah. But during that time that she was kind of wandering of faith, and she's very smart and she's very intellectual, and she was just having trouble with that. That was the only thing we wanted to talk about because our hearts were breaking. She goes, I don't really want to go to church. I'm not even sure I like the church, which is funny. We now go to the same church, so the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. But during that time, I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to hear about her snowboarding trip. Yep. I wanted to talk to her about faith issues and bring on your doubts. Let me look at these with you. But she didn't want that.
No.
And so she actually engaged. Her faith journey coming back was very little with mom and dad. And that doesn't, and I don't think we did it horrible because I don't think we shunned her or whatever, but she found other people that she could kind of communicate with. And she loves our pastor, and our pastor loves her. So I kind of laugh because she'll talk about spiritual conversations she'll have with our pastor. And to be honest, I go, well, I'm one of those kind of guys too.
I could have helped you.
Yeah.
I could have helped you.
You do know that I meet with our pastor once a month. I kind of mentor him, right? But it was back in my youth ministry days.
I love that.
My girls, I'd say, I knew that they were using some of my curriculum at our youth group. And so I'd say, hey, how was youth group today? It was on spiritual gifts. And they'd go, it's great. What'd you guys talk on? I knew.
And you wrote it.
Yeah, and because I had helped the youth pastor deal with it. And they'd go, oh, we talked about God. It was really good. The worship was amazing. And I'm like, did you talk about spiritual gifts? I don't think so. And I'm going, wait, I know what they said. But
that's great.
Beautiful thing of being it's interesting when you see your kids have to grow at their time. And, our pastor from a long time ago, our pastor that we had used to always say, God is never too early, he's never too late. And to be honest, in an intimate relationship with God, there have been times where I've gone, are you sure you're not too late on this one?
Too late.
And, I think we have to learn that with our kids too, that God loves our kids more than we do, which absolutely always blows my mind.
Oh, I know it.
And the love is similar, that a parent has with the love of God. I mean, I really do think it is. But we have to sometimes just understand that, we have to relinquish those, especially the adult kids, relinquish them into the hands and the arms and the love of God. And sometimes that's all you can do because they've strayed or they've walked away.
So, but they can't stop you from praying.
No.
Parents' prayer.
Right. I had a neat experience, Randy, the other day. I keep a journal. So I've been praying since 1983. I go through the 1-year Bible, and my wife just goes, "Me
too.
Seriously?
Yes.
We're going to do a fist bump
Look
right
at
here."
you.
So I laugh because Kathy would say to you, "I think that's boring. Why would you guys do the same thing?" Right? She just goes, every year she does something different. Yeah. Right? I do the same thing.
I just go.
And then I write in a journal my prayers: adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication.
Yeah.
And I start with that. I taught kids that. We called it Acts. And I mean, it's not my own stuff. I just taught somebody that. But I taught kids from somebody else's thing. But when I get to supplication, I write down, the names of my children. I write down my grandkids. And my grandson, Huxley, who's only 4 and he can't read yet. But I showed him, I said, I pray for you every day. See, that's your name. And then he goes, what's that? And I go, well, that's your brother's name, Bodie. And there's James, who's the other grandson. And there's Charlotte, and there's your mom and dad. So Huxley comes to our house last week and he said, I want to see my name. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I said, well, your name is Huxley. You want me to write it down? And he goes, no, I want to see my name. And so, and my prayer journal is up by my bed. And so I go in the book. He goes, in the book. And then I'm even thinking, I just lost it. I couldn't think of it. And then I go, oh my gosh, he wants to see.
Prayer journal.
And he doesn't know the date or the time, but I went, you know what, Huxley, this morning, look at this. I put your name. I want him to know that.
I love that.
And I love that he wanted to see his name. He still doesn't know.
I know.
I'm trying to teach him how to write his name now. I mean, again, he's not even in kindergarten, but I think that's one of the jobs of grandparents. Is to pray for the grandkids. It's one of the jobs of parents to pray.
Yes.
I had an experience when you were talking about radio. I got on radio in 2004 and I had two people tell me the same story. Both Dr. Dobson, who was a big deal in family ministry, and Dennis Rainey. They both said the same thing, and they never talked to each other about this, but they said, Jim, when your platform's going to be big. I was speaking to about 1 million people a day on this.
Oh goodness!
With it's amazing, what happens on that. And they said, and sometimes the evil one comes after you, but will also come after your family, and that freaked me out.
I know.
It's like, oh my gosh. And one had talked about a spirit of depression with one of the family members, and other things. And so I got in the habit of going to the kids. We prayed with them at night, but then when they were in bed, the door was closed, especially as the teenage years. Door was mostly closed.
Yes.
And I would just go to that door and I would pray. And then even with Kathy, this would have really messed with her, but she falls asleep before I do. I put my hand above her. Honestly, I did it not last night because I was here, but the night before. I put my hand above her and I just, God, please, protect her, and all these things. And that has been really helpful for me because now I go to the doors that are empty, but I still go to the door.
Yeah.
I go to Christy's room and I pray for Christy and Steve and James and Charlotte. And then I go to Heidi's room, and, they all had 3 separate bedrooms. And you know what? That's been I don't do it every day, but that's been a neat way of remembering,
yes,
to pray. And you don't need to go to somebody's door to do that, obviously. But for me, it's more moving. It gets me focused better than even when I'm just sitting with my little prayer journal writing their names. Because sometimes I'm writing them fast, looking at the clock, going, I need to get going.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Why? There's a young man in this room with us right now. He's behind the cameras.
Yeah.
He's just one of the finest gentlemen I've ever met.
He's much cooler than you and me, Randy.
Lord,
I can tell. He's got the vibe. He's got the cool hair.
Oh, he's cool.
Yeah, and you've got hair. I don't.
No,
but he's got the cool hair.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Why? But I can't get him to move into a serious relationship with a girl, and I'm curious as to why are our kids waiting on marriage? I mean, I was 23.
Right.
I didn't know anything.
No.
But we just figured out, and I have the battle wounds,
Yeah.
and you do too. Why are the kids, what are they waiting on?
Yeah. Well, that's the big question. And there's all kinds of different opinions on that. But again, it's changed because it used to be that you go through the teenage years. When I was getting my degree in family, we had children, teenagers, adulthood, and elderly. And that was what I learned.
Yes.
But today we have children, teenagers, emerging adults, or we used to call it latent adolescence, but a man named Jeffrey Arnett calls them emerging adults.
Emerging adults.
And then adulthood.
Okay.
And what we find is that the emerging adult time is now what a lot of people did in the teen years. So that's their time of exploration. That's their time of trying to figure out what they're going to do. Once they marry, now the average person in America, that average male, marries at age 31.
Okay.
So that's changed. You got married at 23. I got married at 21. But that was normal for us. So we kind of became more adults. But when you have this new emerging adulthood, it's a time of exploration. It's a time of trying to decide what you're going to do and who you are and all the things that sometimes we were doing in the teenage years. It's not taking place as much. So the average woman gets married now at 29. My friend Doug Fields and I wrote a book called Getting Ready for Marriage that churches use in their premarital and stuff. And we were focused at that point, and it's only been like 5 years, but we were focused on 29 and 27. So it's skewing upwards. So he may be more normal than you realize in terms of the age of dealing with that. Now, that when you meander, sometimes you meander into the wrong areas of life. So these are people who have been involved maybe with pornography for a longer time period. We're now not talking about this gentleman with the beautiful hair.
No, we're not talking about him.
But he's just smiling over here. But they meander into some, or they move in with somebody, or they kind of do this. They're going. You got married, and then you moved on. Wasn't easy.
No.
What happens is they meander into sometimes into straying a little bit, and then they come back, and now they're carrying some baggage into it. Okay. So in the marriage side, it's hard. Those first few years are harder because of sometimes some of the baggage that they brought with them. But at the same time, I think they're once they get married, I said this at church today, and I think this is amazing, that once millennials get married And then when they make babies, the number one thing, they want to be good parents. They want to have good marriages. So we in the church have to provide excellent resources, but we can't do it the same way. None of these kids are going to be listening to Dr. Dobson and having cassette tapes. I used to say, my wife would say, well, she's quoting Dr. Dobson said, and I'm like, that's a cassette tape. Let's
listen to me.
Right. Let's have a conversation. But, they want to hear it in different ways. Obviously, they're going to listen to podcasts. They're going to listen to, they're going to read blogs. They want short form videos, things like that. But that's good news. But again, it really has slowed. The marriage has really slowed down. Part of it is because of cohabitation. If so many people are cohabitating, they're going, why do I need to get married? And they're cohabitating because of, they want to, pool their resources to get a house or all these kind of reasons. I don't think that's smart. And secular research shows that when people cohabitate, they don't do as well in their marriages than later. Greater chance of adultery, greater chance of divorce. Wow. But again, I'm going way off the subject. We just need to introduce him to the right woman, and he'll be fine. But the point being that it's really more complicated today to be a young adult than it was with us. My friends got married at the same age as us, pretty much. Kathy and I got married a little earlier because she had just graduated from college 1 week. But today, that's not the case. So with that being the case, and there's some positive things about that too. They're a little bit more, Kathy and I had to grow up together.
I know.
And we did well because we figured it out, but a lot of people don't. So the average marriage was lasting 4 years.
Oh.
So we always talk about the 7-year itch. That was a movie with Marilyn Monroe. Yeah. No research shows that. Back then when you're getting married younger, if you didn't make it in 4 years, if you kind of worked through that, then you kind of did okay. But it was this magic number of,
So it's not necessarily that we did a poor job modeling what marriage can look like, that they're waiting longer. It's not that so much as it is just
what their life,
their life
thing. No, I think so too. I think that's the case. But at the same time, like I said, there's different opinions, and there are people who would say, hey, they grew up with families that weren't doing well and marriages that weren't doing well, so they're afraid of it, and I understand that. If you were raised in a home where especially if there was some kind of domestic violence or verbal abuse, or just a home where it wasn't going well, you're going, I don't think I want to join that thing.
No.
But Kathy and I, we weren't raised in. My dad was an alcoholic, beautiful man. We're a functioning alcoholic. Became a Christian very much later in life.
Wow.
And my mom was married to my dad, so there was dysfunction, but her dad was an alcoholic. So we were kind of from that thing. Mm-hmm. Kathy and I had to decide to be what we call the transitional generation. The Bible says you inherit the sins of a previous generation to the third and fourth generation.
Right.
And we said, for us, we're either going to recover or repeat. And we felt like that first year we were repeating, not with dad's and mom's, issues or alcoholism or Kathy's those, but we weren't doing it right. And so we had to find mentors. And so I'm suggesting to younger people, the emerging adults, make sure you find mentors.
Right.
Because my mentor was a pastor who actually, I did a service not too long ago in San Antonio. He was my campus life leader. So he was like my youth leader. I wanted to marry somebody like his wife, Barbara. I wanted to have kids like his kids.
Right.
So Kathy and I were fortunate because we worked for him, our first church out of seminary, we worked for him. We had models. We had mentors. So marriage wasn't as scary for us because we saw people who were authentic and real and loved the Lord and were working through things. And, I can remember John, we were working in the same, church, and he would come and he would just say to me, Barbara and I got in the biggest fight. And I'm like, I can't believe that a pastor, I understand me getting in fights with Kathy. Yeah. I can't believe that would happen. And you know what? That was beautiful to me because I went, it was great that,
I know.
And here's how we worked through it.
Yeah.
So he was teaching me how to communicate, how to connect, how to even I think the least developed area of intimacy when it comes to marriage is oftentimes spiritual intimacy. Mm-hmm. And so I learned about spiritual intimacy from mentors, not from my own family, because they weren't going to do that.
Man, that's good. Oh, Jim, I could talk to you for an hour.
This is great. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Jim, where do people go to find out about your podcast, about your books, your website? Where do they go?
Yeah, website, Homeword, HOMEWORD.com.
Okay.
And there's all this stuff you can see. Homeword is a great ministry. We have courses on parenting and marriage. We have books. We have 4 values: strong marriages, confident parents, empowered kids, and healthy leaders. And that's all of our content goes through that.
Love that.
It's a privilege.
Thank you for your time today. And for those of you that listened, watched, go to Jim Burns' podcast, get his podcast, listen to his podcast, and go to get these resources. Jim, thank you for what you've meant to my life and tens of thousands of others.
Well,
Bless you.
I've got your CDs, but the problem is that we don't have a CD player now.
Well, Jim, so, you can now listen.
It's amazing.
Other places.
You know what? I heard that there's this thing called the internet.
Yeah, I know.
And
cool.
I think I listened to a couple of your songs last night while I was and I found it. It was on the internet. I think Al Gore invented that in 1984, didn't he? That thing called the internet.
Al did it. Love Al. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Lord bless you.